Rangnick at the wheel, and Fred's on the score sheet. Goals galore in Serie A as the Scudetto race is blown wide open. Jesse Marsch gets his marching orders. MLS Conference Final drama, and that's just the tip of the weekend recap iceberg. I'm here with Jimmy Conrad, Heath Pearce to break down all the action. Qué Golazo weekend recap begins right now. Hey everybody, welcome to Qué Golazo. Welcome to our weekend recap. Thank you so much for being part of the family. If you're watching this on YouTube, I can't emphasize this enough. Smash that like button. Also, we are live, so we want to hear from you. Get in that comment section. If you have something for Jimmy or Heath or yours truly, please send them in. Share your thoughts, ask a question, get things off your chest. Our producer, Des Norris, will throw the best comments on screen. And even if we don't, mention them or answer your question, we'll put them up on the screen so everybody can see your incredible commentary. And everybody will say, my goodness, why aren't you hosting Qué Golazo instead of LME? Some of you are listening to this in the podcast form later on. That's nice. Please leave a rating and review. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere else you listen to your pods. Right then, Heath Pearce, how are you, bud?
I was good until I saw Jimmy wearing a Real Betis shirt, and after the same week as Jonathan Johnson wore a Real Betis shirt, conveniently while Real Betis continues to climb up the table. It just seems a little convenient to me, but outside of that, I'm great, man. I'm great.
Oh, that's great. Jimmy, would you care to defend yourself?
No, that's nothing to defend. They went to the camp new and got a big result against Barcelona, the first loss for Xavi since he's been in charge. Listen, I'm just kind of supporting teams that are wearing stripes, including my very own club, Newcastle, who won their first Premier League game of the season against Burnley. Thank you, Burnley, for allowing that to happen. It's much appreciated.
Finally, right? And JJ did call it. And by the way, because we are live, we're also tracking, of course, the MLS Conference Finals, NYCFC. By the way, just scored. They're leading 2-1 against Philadelphia Union. So, we'll keep you in tracks with that because we're going to talk about that towards the end of the game, towards the end of the show. I'm sorry, but we got plenty to discuss, everybody. And we begin, of course, in the Premier League. Ralf Rangnick at the wheel. Manchester United 1-0 against Crystal Palace. You already saw a few things, I think, under Rangnick, but I'd love the boys to chime in. But United get that 3 points under their new interim manager. Jimmy Conrad, thoughts, buddy?
Yeah, well, from a defensive perspective, and as a former center back, I'm very proud of this. They got their first clean sheet at home since April, their third clean sheet of the season in all competitions. And I think that Ralf Rangnick is really most impressed with that. He really wanted to make sure there was some emphasis on the defensive side of the ball. And as I kind of parsed through his quotes after the game and listened to him in his press conference, what I really loved and the type of coach that I want to be one day if I ever get there, or even when I do coach some of the youth stuff that I'm involved with now, mainly with my daughter's teams. I'm the best volunteer dad coach of all time, everybody, but is being proactive on both sides of the ball, that even if you don't have the ball, you're still in control of the game. You're still allowing, okay, they can have possession, but they're having possession where you want them to have possession. And the fact that that type of terminology is coming out of Rangnick's mouth makes me want to get to know Ralf Rangnick even more. I just really liked what he put together, even though he only had a few days to organize his team. They played very narrow in a 4-2-2-2. I like that he had Cristiano Ronaldo up top with a partner with Marcus Rashford, and that he had the double tens there with Sancho and Bruno Fernandes. And I do actually think under Rangnick, we're going to see a lot more of McTominay and Fred, and much to the chagrin, I'm sure, of a lot of United fans. But given what they do and the type of energy they bring behind the ball and how they win it and how they can actually force a team to play a little higher up the field, I think that's going to be at least good for Fred and McTominay. But yeah, great result overall. They did what they needed to do, got the clean sheet and 3 points. And that is definitely a performance to build on.
Yeah, the only thing I would say to that is, obviously, I thought for long periods, it's the best pressing I've ever seen from this team in terms of a cohesive press, in terms of not even just once they're set up. It's more of in transition when the game is chaotic, just seeing. And it reminds me, and again, I was never really a student of the old Manchester United, but the one thing that I remember growing up watching was energy, right? When they would get in their blocks and they would press, they would just force negative passes until it went back to a goalkeeper who would lump it long, win the second balls, and then they'd win possession there and build out. And it just seemed like they had that same thought. Instead of saying, hey, we sit in our lines, we sit in our blocks. When they hit that line of confrontation, we press. If they go back, we stay here. It was more of this forcing this negative passes, but that would then lead to 50-50 challenges in the air from a long ball on the goalkeeper. The only thing I would actually say, and this might actually make some people mad, is I just don't know moving forward where Bruno Fernandes fits into this side. If you're in a 4-2-2-2,
Bold.
listen, I like the 4-2-2. And Jimmy, as Jimmy said, I think it puts a lot on McTominay and Fred, and whether they're the answers long-term or not, it forces them to have to do a lot of that dirty work. I think those next 2 10s, right? That's where I'm seeing some issues, because Bruno Fernandes, yes, he's going to float, but he has such an ability when he's good to have the final ball, to have the perfect ball. But when he's not, which I would consider right now at his best, and his best being world-class, no doubt. But when he's anything less than world-class, this is the reason why the 10 position doesn't really exist anymore, is that he just gives a lot of turnovers. He kills the flow of play. He tries to force things. And that's the type of player he is. That's no knock on him. That's a knock on the system, because when the team's trying to build up and create any sort of rhythm, especially in chaos, he looks for that final ball very often. And when that ball is off, you now have to have workers around you. And I think that's a little bit of the chaos that the team is going to continue to suffer from when he's on the field. Again, when he's having a good game, there's no player, the very few players in the world like him can do what he does, has the range of passing that he has, can finish, but he makes bad decisions at times to shoot from tough angles, from tough spots. Last year, it was fantastic. He could finish those. This year, he's not. Last year, he could put in that perfect ball 9 out of 10 times. This year, he's not. And you start to see those things where the players are around, you look around, you say, hey, we're in clear possession. Why are you shooting that? Why are you making these decisions? And I think that could hurt moving forward and leave a position open. I don't know what you do with him if you don't play him. I think that's a difficult position to put any manager in, but I do wonder how he's going to fit if you have, again, Ronaldo and him on the field, both looking to do the same thing, and that's to be the difference maker on the field for the team that day.
No, I agree with those sentiments, and that's an interesting conversation to have about Bruno. It almost seems like maybe under Rangnick, you can only have one luxury player on the field at a time. So it's either Ronaldo or Bruno. I'm very curious to see how that plays out moving forward. I do, though, want to throw out there for everybody that maybe doesn't care for Manchester United but still watch the game, that Crystal Palace had a hell of an opportunity in about the 75th minute. Yeah. And then the next foray down the field that maybe should have been scored, and the next foray down the field, that's when Man United and Fred, of all people, I've come up with a new thing, WTF, and it means what the Fred. And usually what the Fred, he's like, what is he doing? There's no way that dude's Brazilian. But then he showed his Brazilian card with that goal, which was his weak foot, and that was a hell of a finish. And I think he's really going to blossom amongst some other players too. I think Jadon Sancho is really going to blossom under Rangnick as well. So there's so many positives to take away from this game. But there was the game, when the game was in the balance, still at 0-0, Palace did have that one opportunity to maybe snatch a point or all 3 points. And that we shouldn't just completely forget about that opportunity, because that obviously would have changed a lot of the narrative.
Yeah, no, we shouldn't. By the way, thank you so much for everybody already commenting. Some are agreeing with you, Heath, about Bruno Fernandes, of course, and the style and the system, obviously, will take massive precedent there. 2 things that were immediate to me was they weren't Manchester United under Rangnick system, even in these very early stages, they weren't countered as much. And that's a massive already advantage, because United usually, especially under Solskjaer, were just like sufferers in defensive transition. And obviously he didn't even change the lineup from the previous game, so you already saw like tactically what was gonna happen there. But well done, Manchester United, you got your win, 1-0 against Crystal Palace. In terms of this similar kind of conversation, Mauricio Pochettino continues to be a talking point for the permanent job, at the very least this summer, and they weren't impressive, PSG, against Lens. They're only a point away there. Just very quick thoughts. Do you think, I know, Jimmy, you said it earlier, actually, so I'll just return to you, and then Heath obviously chime in, but you're not even sure Pochettino should be the man for the job anyway. What do you
Yeah, there are times, though he did start all 3 Argentinians up top with Di Maria and Icardi and Messi. I watched a good portion of this game, and Lens did have a lot of opportunities when PSG were down 1-0 and when they were pushing forward and committing more numbers. And I think that's where they got the bulk of their opportunities, and maybe should have stole all 3 points. But what I'll say is PSG creates so many opportunities that if they don't finish those opportunities, then yes, of course, teams are going to come around. They're going to get some BS goal and they're going to score. And then it's going to be really difficult for them to get back into it. Why I don't know about Pochettino in this particular regard is because he's a high pressing guy, and he doesn't have the guys that want to play the way his style. So it's almost like, yeah, okay, I've got some of the world's best players, but I like to play this way, and these guys don't play that way, and I don't really know. I'm doing my best over here, And so I would really like to get a beer with Mauricio Pochettino when there's no cameras, and just like give it to me straight, dude, because he'd be like, God damn it, Mbappe, what a nightmare, and Messi. I just like the real truth about all these guys and how they're performing and all that. One thing of note, Mbappe didn't start. He comes in. He ends up dropping a dime to another sub, Wijnaldum, who scores. Mbappe doesn't celebrate with the team. He just turns around and walks back. And I just thought, Yeah, you might be pissed at Pochettino or whatever, but dude, like that's a big goal and a big moment to get it back to 1-1. Go celebrate with your guys, you know? And I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I don't want to be too harsh in my judgment here, but if I was captain of the team and I saw one of my teammates acting like that, I'd go grab him by the shoulder and make sure he went and celebrated with the guys, because it just feels like you're starting to create a little bit of a chasm between what's happening, and that just kills the vibe, you know? And so I'm very curious to see how Pochettino once again is going to handle this. I don't know if he's the right guy for PSG. I don't even know if he's the right guy for Manchester United, but obviously we have to wait and see.
Yep.
Yeah. The only thing I would add to that is, again, that managerial skill of ego and people management. We've seen that in the past. I think about Mertesacker when he was at Arsenal, and when he would grab players and send them over to say something to the fans. When you had Carlos Puyol, if you remember that sort of highlight reel that's on the internet, that it's constantly him, like every time there's a situation, him like smacking one of his players on the back of the head for over celebrating, sending them back to the half line, or like forcing them to stand up and keep playing when they take a little bit of a knock and things like that. I just think about that in the context of Mbappe. Like, who is the one that's putting their arm around him? Because he's a young guy. He's won everything. He's done everything already. And he is going through it, right? Is my future here? Is my future elsewhere? I was the king of all this, and now look at all these people around me that are getting this attention. Where's, woe is me type of situation. And not because he's starting or not starting in matches, but more of like somebody saying, you're an important part of this. Let's figure this out. Or his future is undecided. It almost seems like he's making a little bit of a scene. And that mentality can be, he hasn't been known for having that sort of mentality. Obviously, we're not in the locker room, but that can be poisonous. It can last a long time for players that end up jaded. We've seen that with a number of big players in the past that sort of get this sort of ego. And so, yeah, I think for a player like that and like Mbappe, and I know we're going back to the Pochettino conversation. A lot of that's going to be how you manage and how you get people to buy into the system. He's got the biggest challenge in the world right now of getting these big stars to buy into the system. Man United won't be that difficult. I think Man United is more about crafting a roster. And what do you do with some of the tough decisions of moving players on? Maybe he's in the process of figuring all that out now. But I don't think he's necessarily the wrong manager. But whoever it is, he spent 5 or 6 seasons at Spurs. You need to invest in somebody that you're going to give a number of seasons. And I think Ole Gunnar has done a good job of moving this team forward. I think, putting Ronaldo to the side, which I think is really what spurred any sort of progress. Now the next person has to come in and be able to take that for another 3-4 years, knowing that that's post Ronaldo era, and it's building a foundation for the future.
No, absolutely correct. Just something, food for thought for everybody, by the way. And I'm paraphrasing Ralf Rangnick here, but he always says you adapt your system to your players, not the other way around. And, there could be a question to say, Mauricio Pochettino, is he culpable for not adapting his style to PSG's players? Are the egos too big? Is it a tougher thing? What do you think, Jimmy?
Well, Luis, what if he can't? What if he can't actually figure out a way?
The mountain could be too big to climb, right?
Yeah. Well, how do I do this? I've got he has those 3 working hard midfielders, usually more often than not with Herrera and Idrissa Gueye and Paredes. And sometimes he has Verratti when he's healthy, and I think Verratti's really the key player in all this, because he is that one guy that can help the team transition in a meaningful way. We've talked about this. But he's got a lot of luxury players, and it's a lot to balance, and a ton of ego. And you got Mbappe, who's already asked to be wanted out, and Messi, who seemed almost reluctant to come to PSG. He's like, well, Barcelona kind of screwed me. I'm just going to go there, And so it just didn't seem like there's a vibe around the team. Now, that said, they're still crushing it at the top of Liga. They're into the knockout rounds of the Champions League.
And that's been my thing. Get yourself to the knockout stages. Right. Yeah, go ahead.
But there's still... the teams that end up winning things, they have a little something, right? And I don't think I've seen that little something yet. Now, for all you Paris fans out there, what's really important to know is I don't think you've played at your peak. And that is a really scary proposition for the rest of Europe, in my humble opinion. So the jury's still out, obviously, but I think there's a lot of work to do there.
Yeah, the main thing, getting to your peak is the hard part with this group, right? And when I think about Rangnick's quote there, well, Pochettino had a say in 6 signings this summer, the big signings that they all had, right? And so what is it that he obviously brings them in, knowing you don't bring them in and go, well, let's see how these players play, let's see what kind of guys they are, or see what kind of quality they have. You're bringing in world-class players that are obviously going to disrupt the locker room and the style of play. And yes, I agree, you have to adapt to those players, but at the same time, I hope he had a plan, or maybe it was over his head and he had no control of those signings, which is an even bigger problem for any manager that's going to come in. And PSG, who are backed by sovereign funds, are able to make it somebody's individual passion project. And that's a dangerous recipe, no matter how big the names of the players are in that situation. So I think it's a tough situation to be in, but obviously he's the one that's ultimately saying yes to these signings. So he has to either adapt or had to have an idea that, I've got 3 of the best players in the world, but guess what? None of them defend. What am I going to do now? You better have a good answer for that question, because right now, yeah, Jimmy, top of the table. Yeah, they're in the knockout rounds of the Champions League, but it just takes one tough loss for them, and they are definitely beatable at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Daniel, just talking about maybe some other players, Bruno Fernandes aside, might suffer a little bit. Luke Shaw, Wan-Bissaka, McTominay. We will see what happens. But the most important thing, obviously, is that victory, 3 points, and Manchester United roll on. And the discussion of who will take the permanent job, it could be even Rangnick. You never know. Takes control there. All right, the rest of the Premier League, by the way, Chelsea, West Ham. Well done, West Ham. The bubbles came back at the London Stadium. Of course, there's the rest of the results, as well as West Ham win 3-2 against Chelsea. Divock Origi at the death for Liverpool. Amazing. Man City take care of business against Watford. Aston Villa, Steven Gerrard's Aston Villa, 2-1 against Leicester City and Brendan Rodgers. Newcastle get that win, as Jimmy Conrad was saying as well.
Suck it, haters.
And Everton and Arsenal face each other on Monday. And quickly before we go back to that, Victor Orta, by the way, director there at Leeds United, went a little crazy in that late draw against Brentford. A quick question to you boys and everybody else. Do you like that? If it was your team and it's your director, do you think, oh yeah, I love that passion? What do you think, both of you? Yeah, Jimmy, go ahead. You said
no. I would say that that shows me that it matters, that he cares. And yeah, is it professional for him to go after whoever he was going after? Maybe not, but I like that there's a little sauce in the front office in the luxury boxes, right? That matters to the people that are making the decisions and who invest. Sometimes there's this, I don't know, this indifference to what's happening on the field. It's an investment, and maybe they want to lose money so they can balance their books somewhere else. We see that with the Kraft family. Shout out to the Kraft family for doing that for years with the New England Revolution. So you just don't know. But when you see your sporting director and it matters to him, and maybe he's feeling some pressure too, right? Because Leeds hasn't really been killing it in any stretch of the imagination. But I like that there's a little bit of that emotion and that he cares.
Yeah, Heath?
Yeah, I fully agree. I like that emotion. Obviously, if this is somebody who is doing this on week in, week out, then it's problematic, right? It's somebody that's, I saw this up in Montreal with the ownership group being kind of caught up in the emotions of games, making, kind of spending too much time in the locker rooms amongst the players and sort of being overly involved. And it manifests itself sometimes with signs from fans in the stadium, supporters attacking the sporting director and people saying, it's kind of the Ole outs and those types of situations. And they get caught up in all of that. And then they're in the locker rooms and they sort of become a little bit too close to the team, which I think could be problematic. But if there's an outburst and things like that, I think it's a sign if it's once in a while. But again, if this is somebody that's getting caught up in these emotions all the time, it can be a big distraction for the club.
Yeah, and just one final thing, as I mentioned, by the way, Everton, Arsenal, Marcel Brandt, director of football, steps down. And that's something that we were talking about actually in the weekend preview. Jonathan Johnson brought it up and we discussed it. It's more than just Rafa Benitez. A few changes higher up obviously are affecting Everton. Back to you there, Heath Pearce, and then Jimmy chime in about this change here, as obviously Everton board sees, there's bigger problems. It's just the managerial side and what's going on the pitch.
Yeah, I think this is really important because so often we literally focus on, again, the Ole out thing has happened for months, right? And we talk about him. But what about everything that happens behind closed doors? You got boards of, these are conglomerate businesses now, right? You have investors, you have board of directors, you have the sporting side, front office, back office. You have all these people contributing to this thing to make it successful for a number of reasons, whether it's share value, share price, results, passion, whatever it is. Everybody has an intention when they're involved, and you have a lot of people that maybe get to fly under the radar because they're not the ones forced to get the results at the weekend. He obviously just signed a 3-year extension, which I find a little bit bizarre and odd that there was this level of belief and whether he believes in the project or not, or had some sort of falling out. But that's part of the club, and I actually appreciate anybody who steps down or is let go or relieved of their duties, even with a long-term contract, if they're able to have that foresight to saying, hey, this project wasn't what I thought it was, or perhaps we don't see eye to eye of where we take this. We've taken this a few steps forward. What the next step is, we don't agree on that. Rather than just burning this whole thing down, which is a detriment to the fans, to the club, let's just part ways and we'll do separate projects. And when you can identify that early on, I actually respect that quite a bit.
No, what I would jump in and say is that I don't think the accountability should always just be with the manager. I think there's more that's going on behind the scenes. And I know that we'll talk about Jesse Marsch and RB Leipzig here very soon. And I think there's a straight line between this conversation and what happened there, where if the manager that you've hired isn't equipped with the tools to play the style that he wants, and then you expect a different result than what these two things, you have these sets of players and this manager, does it all work together? Then that, and that person who's in charge signed the players and then hired the manager. I don't always think that's just on the manager. And I like that there's some accountability and some responsibility that has to happen at the director of football, sporting director, whatever the role is called, that person also has to take some of that as well and say, I got to do better. So I have some respect for him for stepping down, or at least feeling the pressure and ending his time amicably with the club. And I wish that there were more people out there that did it, but there's obviously a nice thirst for power and greed, and not a lot of people want to give that up. Looking at you, Daniel Levy.
By the way,
did I say that out loud? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's
out loud this weekend. Let's celebrate.
Out loud, you called out names, I think. Hey, listen, we have some Arsenal viewers right now. Some are nervous. Heath, how you feeling about the game? Just real quick.
Oh, I mean, tomorrow's game for Arsenal? Yeah. I mean, I like that. I like the controversy of a Everton side that are struggling right now. And now your director of football steps down. This is a good time. And again, I think Arsenal are solid where they're looking at in the table. And I know we'll put the table on the screen soon, but the table is looking really, really attractive right now for anybody who's trying to break into the top four. Obviously, West Ham being a team that just will not go away and could sit in that top four until the end of the season, even move up higher. But now there's opportunities for Manchester United's in there, Arsenal's in there, Spurs are back in that conversation. And so it's just a time where you're starting to realize you've got to find your form, you've got to find your rhythm, because if you don't, you will fall out of that conversation. And Arsenal, while they've had some bumps and bruises along the way, actually look like a team that's going to consistently get results. So I like their odds against Everton right now.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, the table is tight because with Chelsea losing, Man City obviously won, and Liverpool won. Man City top now, 35 points. Liverpool 34, Chelsea 33. West Ham retain that fourth spot. It's big, 27. And Antonio Conte's Tottenham looking good. Obviously, it was Norwich with all due respect, but 25 points. United 24, Arsenal 23. So, top half is looking good. Jimmy, final words on Premier League.
Yeah, before we move, I actually want to get your thoughts, and everybody listening and watching. And if you're just listening to us later, hit us up at Qué Golazo Pod on Twitter, because we want to hear you and your thoughts. Bernardo Silva scores a brace against Watford, and the dude is next level right now. I mean, they were talking about him, moving him, that he was almost surplus goods because, Jack Grealish came in, and I'm sure, Luis, I'm sure you quietly love the fact that he's not that influential for the team.
Yeah.
But Bernardo Silva, for whatever reason, the dude's been another level for me. And I just want to throw this out there that I think he's one of the current, in this moment, last 3 months, maybe even from the beginning of the season, one of the top 5 players in the world. I'd go him, Mo Salah, Lewandowski, and Vinicius Jr. And I don't know who that fifth is. So I'm open to hearing from everybody. But I think Salah's got to be in there. Lewandowski obviously is a beast. And even if the refs, even if the refs are helping him in the Klassiker, Benzema, I try to not have 2 players from the same team, and Benzema's hurt, and guess who stepped up this week against Real Sociedad? Vinicius Jr. But I just feel like Bernardo Silva has to be in that conversation. The guy has been lights out.
Yeah, Dusan Vlahovic was going to be my
Vlahovic would be a good one. I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just weird that the guy who just won the Ballon d'Or isn't in your top 5, but that's okay. I'm not here to put him in either.
I mean, he hasn't really done anything, right? I think I saw a stat where Robert Lewandowski scored 16 goals. He scored 16 goals this season or something, or this year, whatever, and Messi scored 1. So, it's
ridiculous
in terms of current trend. Yeah,
Bernardo Silva. From the beginning of the season, I'd say Bernardo Silva.
No, I'm with you. Fabrizio Romano said a very interesting tweet about this, saying, listen, like Pep Guardiola, those rumors of maybe him leaving City, whatever, Pep Guardiola was very influential in that, saying, we want you to stay, bud. We want you to do everything. We will support you, do whatever. And look at Bernardo Silva now. Absolutely. Great question from Natalie, by the way. Which manager has had a greater impact over the last few weeks? Gerrard or Conte? I will not chime in because I already can give you my answer, but what do you think, Heath? And then Jimmy jump. And yeah, answer it quickly, says Des Norris, because
yeah, we got a lot to do here. I would say Conte. I think that team was in the. I mean, man, so were Aston Villa in the dumps, but Aston Villa was more about just bringing in a little bit of a system. I mean, Spurs, for the quality that they have, Aston Villa had to find a new way to play without Jack Grealish, right? They had to find a whole new sort of identity, so to speak, which I think they've done that both defensively and offensively. But under Conte, that was a dumpster fire that looked like it wasn't going to get better for a while, right? And now you're getting results. You're still not getting anything out of Harry Kane, but you're getting results. And I think that was a bigger turnaround, knowing that the center of your universe is a striker who scored all your goals and then now is not scoring goals, but you're still being able to get results. That's my take on that.
Yeah, I actually go Steven Gerrard. I like what he's done very quickly. I think that he's put in a style that already fits the group, and I feel like their energy around what he's brought in has been very good. Not to say that hasn't happened with Antonio Conte, and I feel like he's working from the back to the front. He's trying to lock things down in the front, and maybe his last item is Harry Kane, or just hopeful that Harry Kane will turn it around at some point. But I actually like what Steven Gerrard's done, and I'm very bullish, I'd say, on his future, and that once Jurgen Klopp leaves Liverpool in a few years,
all right,
Steven Gerrard could be the guy that takes over. I'm just saying. I'm being quick. I'm done.
Please, you're trying to give Des Norris a VOD right now. I don't want it. All right. Let's move on. You already know my answer, Natalie. Okay, so it doesn't really matter. All right, we're gonna take a break, but live YouTube, that means a break, and we come right back. And audio, it's a little extra longer, and then we'll be back. But when we come back, the rest of Europe and MLS, we have MLS Cup all set, and I believe yours truly got it right. Thank you, everybody. We're gonna take a break, and we'll be right back. Hey, everybody, we're back. We told you, Qué Golazo weekend recap, Jimmy Conrad and Heath Pearce. All right, let's talk about Serie A. My goodness, the Scudetto race is absolutely ridiculous. 32 goals in the first 8 matches of match day 16. 2 Olympicos, by the way, as well. Let's put that Serie A table on the screen straight away, Des Norris. This is some crazy stuff right here. First of all, Atalanta, 3-2 against Napoli. That's the first home defeat of the season, by the way, because we were talking about how good Napoli are top as well. And now look at that. Inter Milan destroy Roma. I'm sorry there, Jimmy. Juventus does get that win. Fiorentina gets that win. That means that, look at that leapfrog from Juve and Fiorentina. And with Inter as well, that table is so tight. Spalletti's men, by the way, to third, below Milan teams as well when you look at Napoli, because now it's all about Milan, Inter, and AC. Jimmy, Serie A, craziness. Talk to me.
Well, I'm just going to have my first flex of the day. I don't know how many minutes we're into this one, but I went on Paramount Plus and gave some bets for the games, and ultimately I hit 5 out of 6, and my big one was the away day parlay parte, baby. I had Inter Milan and Atalanta both winning away from home, and that paid plus 500. So I'm absolutely buzzing over here. You could just see it kind of written. Inter going into Stadio Olimpico, no Tammy Abraham for Roma, no Pellegrini, missing some key elements there, and I think it really showed. And Inter just in fine form. I also had Edin Dzeko scoring anytime. You knew he'd want to get revenge on his former club that discarded him.
Jimmy, hold on real quick on that. Jimmy, on that real quick. Can we talk about the fact that Dzeko didn't celebrate? Nothing pisses me off more when a guy, because it's one thing to put your head down like you're sad that you beat your team that let you go and allowed you to now go to an even better team and actually have a chance at winning a title instead of Roma who wouldn't. And you just kind of put your head down and walk. I just feel like that's so stupid to me.
It's kind of like
Lewandowski has no problem. Obviously, he's been there for a decade now, but like he's got no problem bagging against Dortmund and then just kind of at least showing some excitement that you scored a goal. It doesn't matter. You don't have to like taunt them.
Well, no, that's true. Taunting is.
I'm making it sound like you're on.
No. I feel like
you taking a position.
No. I mean, I feel like when you win an Academy Award and then you tell everybody how humbled you are that you won it because you want to give a shout out to all your like. Shut up, dude. Just be happy that you won the.
But let's throw that question to everybody watching. I remember when I was working at The Guardian, I wanted to write an article about this. I think first of all, context, right? I think that sometimes not celebrating is disrespectful to your current employer. Sometimes you want to do a little celebration, but it depends how long of a legend or a player you've been in the former club. I think if you were like for a season or 2 seasons in your former club and you score against them, like, it's fine. So should players celebrate goals against their former clubs, everybody?
Who is the Arsenal player that did that? And he ran all the way down to the end of the field when he played for Tottenham.
He got sent off after that.
Who was that?
Adebayor.
Adebayor. Yeah. That was like, that's the next level. There was a level, and he took like 15 steps past that level.
That was very Terrell Owens. Like,
it was great. But Inter Milan, fantastic performance. Just get back into it. I thought Atalanta really came at him. Napoli, despite not having Insigne, Koulibaly, Fabian Ruiz, I thought that they really had a good showing, and they were busy. And that was honestly, if you got to see that game, Napoli versus Atalanta, I thought it was a great advertisement for the league. It was so
fantastic
back and forth. It was so good. And Atalanta just has too many weapons. You can start with Duvan Zapata, and then, okay, he gets a little bit tired. Bring on Luis Muriel, or Pasalic just had 3 goals, and now he's on fire. Malinowski. I mean, it's just relentless how good they are. And credit to their manager, Gasparini, for creating that type of depth despite not having a really big budget. So really impressive performance for Atalanta. For me, a must win for them if they really want to be considered Serie A or Scudetto title contenders. And I'm curious to see how Napoli responds, because those injuries that they've suffered have not gone away. And very quickly about Napoli, if you support them, I would be pissed a little bit at Luciano Spalletti because he didn't make that many rotations, but they were on great form. They were good on both sides of the ball. And you guys have been there. You've seen it. When your team's in good form, you don't want to change anything. Keep it the same. Keep rolling those guys out there. But they're paying the consequences for that, because now they've got a couple guys that are hurt, and that could really hurt them in the Scudetto race.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that, because I think that's well put across all of those games, was the Venezia game. Obviously going up.
That was crazy.
Going up and not being able to hold that lead. And this is the problem.
But you want to break it down first? If it's people that haven't watched it, Venezia was up 3-0, right? Mm-hmm. Then the break, and then suddenly Verona come back. First of all, there was an own goal, and then a penalty, and then in the 67th and 85th minute, Giovanni Simeone once again, and then they end up winning 4-3. There was a red card as well in the 60th minute. Two bangers, by the way.
Yeah, two bangers.
Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah. No, it's just this is the problem for a Venezia side, right? Is you don't know what you have until it's gone. When you're a promotion team, they always seem to go. Yeah, go ahead. They only know how to survive right now, right? They've spent most of their games just trying to survive, prepping for the other team instead of saying like they're a promotion team. And historically and notoriously in Serie A, the promotion teams very rarely stay up. They go up, they're elevator teams, they go right back down again. And so you spend all this time prepping for the teams that you play against that you actually don't know how to hold leads, especially when you have a big lead. You're always kind of figuring out, like, how do we get the one goal? How do we get the one goal and draw? How do we get the one goal and win? And so when you go up like that, you naturally, and I'm guessing there's some sort of psychology behind this, you can't help but take a deep breath and just blow it all out and go, man, we finally made it. We've done something. We can finally have a game that we're stepping up. We have full control of this. And that's when it all falls apart. And they haven't spent time in those environments. And not to give them an excuse, because it's unacceptable to be up that many goals and then just get rained on like that. But it's certainly something they're going to have to learn from, and certainly something they haven't prepped for before. Because like I said, when you're a regular team in the league, you prep for other teams, you build your style of play, home and away. It's a little bit different. But when you're a survival team, I've been in this, I've been relegated, I fought all year. It's all about who you're playing against and how you're going to approach that game to give you the best chance to get 3 points or a point out of that match. And you don't always have a scenario where you're like, well, how do we play if we're up 3-0? And that can be a really, and Jimmy talks about this a lot, where like, oh, the worst thing you can do actually is when you score early, then you're like, oh man, what do we do for the rest of the game? Now we got to hold on to this lead. Now we got to figure out how to play differently. They're going to take risks. Do we change the style of play? And so 3-0, again, no excuse is unacceptable, but I can see it. I can see how that can be a bit of an issue. Usually
it's 2-0 is the most dangerous scoreline. It's like 3-0 really. I mean, hey, listen, Jimmy, what about Mourinho in that post-game presser to the journalist? Your job is a lot easier than ours, which is why we earn a lot more money than you.
I don't disagree with the statement. He's just being
it's mean though.
It is mean. He's just that guy, like, get off my lawn guy, you know. He's just so crotchety now.
Ramka Simpson, yeah.
Before, that seemed somewhat endearing. You kind of liked when he was a little bit hostile because it just added something to it. Now it's just tired and old, just like he is, and I don't think he knows any different. Like, this is how he's tried to been manipulating situations for so many years, and it worked. It got him countless trophies, having this style and this mentality and this mindset. And I just feel like maybe the age of the players, they don't respond to him in the same way. The generation's a little bit different.
Yeah, it's
that's
getting
just
old.
that's just one speculation, but
Yeah.
in some ways, I just think he's gotten a little bit tired, and his new manager bounce doesn't last as long as it
Yeah,
used to.
like Mick Jagger wearing his leather pants now. You don't
No.
have to do it anymore.
Honestly, it reminds me of these movies where it's like the washed up coach and someone runs into him at the local bar and he's got a drinking problem now and he needs to have this like humbling experience where like somebody goes, oh, the high school team lost their coach, and then he steps in and coaches them back, a bunch of bad kids, and he's got through teaching these kids discipline, he actually becomes a new person and whatever. It's the only thing that can make him last, because otherwise
this is an idea for a movie.
Otherwise, it's played out, right? And it's just bullying. Now he's playing at a different level with different quality of players. Coaching at a different level with a different quality of players, and he's got the same mentality, which I think is not fair to the players. It's not fair to the press. And the expectation is that it's the same at Roma as it is at Inter Milan or as it was at Chelsea with a blank check. It's completely different now. And I think you're starting to see this where it starts to hit a little bit different when he makes comments. You go, oh, wow, that hurts a little bit more than it used to when you were the king of the world.
It's getting old, I think. It's getting old. We're going to move on from Serie A, but before I do that, praise up to Andrei Shevchenko, because Genoa's schedule coming up is not easy, and the fact that they need to get some wins. I mean, I think Marco Messina tweeted it. It's like the worst time to bring him in, but is it really a good time? It's just bad. It's going to be very difficult for Shevchenko. All right, let's move on, because we did have a big game in Germany, that Klassiker, and we did get what we expected, and then some, by the way. Bayern Munich win 3-2 against Dortmund. All right, I mean, listen, there was obviously the penalty decision, Hummel's handball. I mean, talk to me, Jimmy, and then obviously Heath, what happened here? What do you think? Jude Bellingham, of course, everybody saw that post-presser. He said, you can look at a lot of the decisions in the game, and if you give a referee who was match fixed before the biggest game in Germany, what you expect? He didn't hold anything back there. Jimmy, talk to me.
Yeah, I love that. I will say the first half, very similar to Napoli-Atalanta, was an incredible advertisement for the league. It was so back and forth, and the fact that they were going at each other, there wasn't any slowing down, there wasn't any conservative play. And it's funny because, both of these teams have to know that they have to be a little bit tighter defensively against each other, but they just throw all that out the window, and I've got plenty of time for it. I love it. But in the second half, I thought it was all Dortmund for the first 15 or 20 minutes. Erling Haaland scores. I don't know why they took him out, by the way. If we want to break down Marco Rose, like 10 minutes left, you're chasing the game, and you take out Erling Haaland. It doesn't make any sense outside of maybe he had a little bit of an injury and they want to be cautious.
He's just coming back from injury. So
whatever, dude. Like that game is beyond. Smart. Like they're not playing Freiburg, or whatever.
What do you mean? Freiburg's battering everybody in the league.
Actually, they scored 6.5 against Mönchengladbach in Mönchengladbach. Listen, you're right. I used the wrong team. But what I'm saying is that I just don't understand that move.
Key game, you don't take him out.
You don't take him out. But I will add that penalty call or lack thereof, I think it was against Marco Reus or like Theo Hernandez or Lucas Hernandez, came in. That's a total penalty. And the fact that wasn't called is an absolute joke. And then obviously they get a penalty called on them. And it honestly did feel like, I'm with Jude Bellingham here, it felt like the referee was wearing a Bayern Munich jersey underneath his yellow one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
He wanted an autograph after the game.
Yeah. Listen, he's just a big fan. It has nothing to do with the way that he calls the game. You know what I mean? You got to be able to separate that. As soon as that final whistle is, you can go back to being a fan again. It doesn't affect the way that you act on the field. But I agree. It was disappointing in that context because I thought that it could have been, obviously Erling Haaland staying on would have been nice, but I can understand that somebody in the back room is going, do not hurt this guy. He's worth a fortune. Yeah, if he gets hurt a second time in a season, that drops that transfer fee, and we can fund this club for a decade if we get what we want out of him. And the fact that you want to protect him from himself because he's just a monster and he's probably built to break a little bit with the size that he is. But to go back to the game itself, the most disappointing thing for me in that game was Mats Hummels. Mats Hummels, the most experienced player of anybody on any field in Germany at any time, makes a number of mistakes that end up letting them down, and quite disappointing, to be honest with you, the types of mistakes that he made that had an effect on this game, the biggest game of the year. You talk about, Jimmy, like you said, it's the one game a year that you keep Haaland on. That's the one game a year that Mats Hummels should be able to get up for and score and celebrate against his former team and not feel bad about it. But yeah, overall, just fantastically. And the other part that was a little disappointing is the fact that COVID is rampant right now in Germany. And so it was a limited capacity because normally with that, you can hear the sound come through and the atmosphere. I mean, it was still loud and it was still rocking, and you could still feel that sort of a Klassiker vibe to it. But when it's a packed house, Jimmy and I both played in there. I played there once Bundesliga and once with the national team before Jimmy's World Cup in 2006.
Thanks, buddy.
I just wanted to flex once on the Bundesliga, then flex twice that we both got to share an experience in Dortmund. But anyways, that was my final thoughts. I got lost after flexing.
No, but Lewandowski celebration against his former team.
He's fine. It's been enough years. It's fine.
And it's Lewandowski. Do whatever the hell you want.
That gives him 22 goals in 15 games against his former club.
Oh, but no Ballon d'Or, you tell me, right?
Yeah, that's the thing that continues to piss me off. It wasn't even like
I know we shouldn't get this angry about Ballon d'Or, but it really pisses me off that he didn't get it.
Yeah,
right, and here's a question for everybody, by the way, both of you included, but everybody watching, please, we would love your comments on this. 4 points now ahead of Dortmund, Bayern Munich. You would think that they're just going to keep on cruising. Is that it then? Bayern Munich winning Bundesliga? Did we think that already? What do you think, Jimmy and Heath?
I will say that even if Borussia Dortmund won this game, that Bayern Munich is still winning the league for the 10th straight year. Okay. That makes it super awesome and intriguing.
Yeah. I think Bayern are just too strong. However, I will say that the way in which Bayern played today was problematic to how far they'll go in the Champions League. If they play that way in the Champions League, I don't think that they are unbeatable. And I don't think they have a little bit of that magic where they could just grind down teams and just never make that vital error. If they're going to make vital errors, obviously a different squad today. But if they're going to do that, I worry about their chances in the Champions League. But with regard to Bundesliga, I just don't see how Dortmund are literally playing the best that they have. They're completely depleted as a roster over the last month and a half or so. And they're flying on all cylinders and can't get that result. I think that's kind of indicative of the fact that they're just going to end up coming up short in the end.
Yeah, and COVID obviously will remain an issue as well in terms of, just that energy from the stadium. But Bayern Munich looking very good. But here we go. Joe, I'm just kind of over Bayern Munich winning all of the time. You guys know I love watching a good team play. I mean, if I'm a hardcore Bundesliga fan, or if I like, I don't know, Leipzig, which we'll get to in a second. Leipzig was a bad choice actually because they got their own money. They just messed up. But Augsburg or somebody that you really want to do well. I mean, it's just it's the way the wind blows, man, in the Bundesliga. I'm sorry to tell you, Joe.
I will say that the Bundesliga starting, I think it was this season, started leveling out or the TV money. So I think that could bring something, but it's like one of those things where it's like, hey, we're changing after you've given this team 25 years of stacking the decks and getting their money right to be like, hey,
Real Madrid and Barcelona.
Yeah. Like moving forward, we're going to split this with everyone. And they're like worth $1 gazillion and we're still trying to survive. But thank you for that. But I do think that there could be another winner in the next decade or so.
We'll see. Well, if you're Leverkusen, or as Jimmy says, Neverkusen, that will never happen. All right, let's talk Jesse Marsch, everybody. We love him. He's a friend of the show, but he is done with RB Leipzig. CEO Oliver Mintzlaff said, Jesse came to us and said, I don't know if I'm the right coach for this team, if my philosophy fits with this fantastic squad. It just tells you a lot about him as a human being, I think. But at the same time, obviously, I have a lot of questions about that kind of statement, and just moving forward as well for Jesse Marsch. What's next for RB Leipzig? What's next for Marsch? There's a lot here to discuss. Jimmy, thoughts?
First and foremost, I'll say that I thought they would give Jesse more than 5 months. He started at Red Bulls in New York. He then was an assistant at RB Leipzig. Then he moved to RB Salzburg. And yes, RB Salzburg has probably more funds and is kind of the Man City, let's say, of the Austrian league. But he did what he had to do. And then they went into the Champions League and competed. He also had a chance to develop some of the world's best players, including Erling Haaland and now Dominik Szoboszlai, who plays for RB Leipzig. He just seemed like a natural fit. And then the fact that like his methodology and philosophy all of a sudden wouldn't work after 5 months, and he can't work with these players that he's already worked with previously. And they have similar methodologies and they talk a lot when he's it's not like he came from a completely different club. Yeah. He's under the same umbrella and they're all kind of thinking and talking about the same things. I find it very odd that he would walk in there and say, maybe I'm not the right guy for the job philosophically. Now maybe his style of motivation or whatever was a little bit too much, or I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot more to that type of statement. And it takes a lot to walk into somebody's office and admit that. For me, there's two reasons you do that. Either you see the writing on the wall and you're just going to get ahead of it, right? And end things amicably and just be appreciative and grateful for your time. Or there's something else that you can see that you think you're still the right guy, but you're like, this is a losing battle because either some players have turned against me or whatever it is. And so, yeah, I look forward to maybe 4 or 5 years down the line when we get a little bit more of the true story. But very similar to what we're talking about with Marcel Brands at Everton, the sporting director, I feel like this sporting director, and I can't think of his name at the minute, but Minslav or whatever, he needs to take some responsibility and accountability as well, because they did lose their 2 starting center backs. They did lose Sabitzer, who has been a rock in that middle of midfield. They did sign a player in Andre Silva, who isn't the same type of players that he was used to working with at RB Salzburg. They didn't really equip him with the tools to make that happen. They had more than enough talent to win. And I actually don't feel like it's the Champions League group. When you're with Man City and PSG, okay, you're probably not going to win those games, but let's compete. And I think he actually competed in those 3 games so far against those 2 clubs. It was the listless performance at home against Club Brugge, where they lost 2-1. It can't happen. You can't lose to them at home. They've lost some home games they shouldn't have lost to. They started the season losing to Mainz. That just wasn't a good start. And then the one game in the Champions League when he wasn't on the sideline, they went to Belgium and won 5-0. And I was like, that's not good, because now they've proven they can win when he's not there. And I think that was just one step towards what was going to be an eventuality.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is I go back to, I was watching a game last year when Steve Cherundolo was doing a broadcast for the Bundesliga, and he was doing it out of Cologne when he was still living in Germany before he came back here to the US. And he was very critical of young players. And I remember just being like, what's this guy's problem, man? I am a young player lover. I am all about the young players. Shut up about talking crap about young players. But what he was alluding to was that it is really hard to be good for a long time. And I'm adding words to what he was saying, but it's really hard to be good for a long time with young players because ultimately they make a mistake. RB Leipzig, for most of the games that I've watched this year, haven't been bad. They just make mistakes that are costly. And whether it's, we've seen that with Tyler Adams. We've seen that big time in Tyler Adams in the Champions League with PSG. We saw that Tyler Adams at the national team level. Big mistakes, or mistakes that become big mistakes when you get scored on in transition and things like that. They haven't added new pieces. And so the only thing I would say is that, one, it's a really hard challenge if they're setting this standard of, hey, every year we're going to compete for top 4 with the youngest team in the world, or in the Bundesliga, and with this philosophy of under 23 and blah, blah, blah. It works for a while, but if you don't replenish that constantly, that's a hard thing to do. And 2, there had to be a writing on the wall, as Jimmy said. For him to look down the line, down the road, and go, okay, they're probably telling me I'm not going to get any transfers in the window, or I'm having to fight through this. I don't really believe in this team, and adding 1 or 2 pieces isn't going to change the dynamic of the squad. It's probably better for me to just cut my losses and move on to the next club. And I think that's, again, another sign of maturity for him to not try to ride this out and be overly passionate and connected to the club because he was at Red Bull New York. He was in Salzburg, to now just say, okay, I'm not part of the family anymore. We've had a great run. I've done some great things along the way. I've got supporter shield. I won the league. I've competed in Champions League. Now it's time to move on to the next thing, instead of feeling like I've done this whole circle of life thing where now I've been successful at the last club, which would be hard to do no matter what. So I think the mix of young players and the fact that he probably sees that there's not really a future, like, what's the upside? Qualify for Champions League. You try again the next year with the same squad. I just don't see how this team can do that.
It's very difficult to not just restructure a squad, get them to do well, etc. Not just losing players, like both of you said, but also the spine. There was a spine there that was truly lost, and that's difficult. I do find it interesting, and Fabrizio Romano also reported about it, just how some players were not adapting to his system, and obviously Jesse Marsch is, smart enough and good enough to understand when he is failing. What's next for him, do you think? Because that's a tricky one, right? We talk about how great he is, how talented he is, but there's also that extra mountain, I guess, you have to climb when you're an American coach in Europe. Obviously, Ralf Rangnick, he was his former assistant, maybe there. I don't know. What do you think, Jimmy? What's next for Jesse Marsch? And then Heath, obviously, your thoughts.
Yeah. I think the American tag and an American manager is an easy excuse for anybody to get fired. Well, he's American. He said he calls it soccer, not football. I mean, that's more than enough justification to let him go. And I don't think they did that. I don't think that's really involved in this at all. I just don't think it was realistically working. And we've been talking about it for a couple of weeks, man. We're kind of worried, or a couple of months now at this point, worried about Jesse Marsch. These results they're just not consistent. They didn't really find any consistency this season. Anyway, I think that he does have a relationship, a good one, with Ralf Rangnick. If he ended up on that Manchester United staff, all right. I guess that's failing upwards, right? I kind of would like like to see them there, especially because Rangnick's already said he's only going to be a bit of an interim. Not to say that Jesse would all of a sudden be coaching Manchester United. I think that fan base would melt if they thought, oh my God, an American's managing us. Oh my God, like what's the world's going to explode. But I think he would be fine. But that said, that's a different conversation. That he could see, I could see him there. Maybe he's a better assistant coach. Maybe he wants to get out of the spotlight as the head guy for a while and get under Rangnick and see where it goes from there, and maybe take a step somewhere else. I don't know. He was a player for Bob Bradley, and Bob, had the Egypt national team job, then went to Stabæk, and then went to Ligue 2, and went to these places to try to carve out and get some more experience. He can maybe take that proverbial step back to go 2 steps forward, but he definitely has to go back and prove himself somewhere where hopefully he'll get a chance and a much longer leash to actually have success.
Yeah, I think there's a second, like there's a tier 1B club out there for him. I think not a tier A. I think there's a tier A assistant coaching job, as Jimmy mentioned. And then there's, maybe there's vacant jobs right now. When you look at the possibility of a club like LAFC that's still open, maybe he gets into the discussion of that, coming behind Bob Bradley, who obviously gave him his first start as a manager. I think clubs like that. When I think about LAFC or a club that Jesse could be part of, what LAFC are missing right now is a culture and identity or a philosophy of play that goes beyond what a coach can do, what any coach does or any players that you have, right? You come in and you build this philosophy of the club. And LAFC did it by signing big players. Bob Bradley did a great job of making those players work and being competitive in day one. But now Bob Bradley's gone. The team had a bad year. And you look and you go, well, who are they as a club? And they don't have that identity yet. And so they need somebody that can come in. And again, I'm going a little bit too deep into this, but they need somebody that could be attractive for Jesse Marsch, where you come in and you get to build this thing. And it's not about results today, tomorrow. It's about building this thing, and the results will come. Similar to we see now some of the teams that have focused on their academies for the last decade starting to come to fruition, and other clubs starting to kind of build that philosophy or that club that goes far beyond any players or any manager of the team. That could be a fun project for him if they gave him carte blanche to be able to do that with John Thorrington within the club. I don't know if he'll get that or if it's even an interesting opportunity for him, but those are the 3 sort of options I could see out there. Obviously, Cincinnati's still open. Houston's still open. Real Salt Lake is still open. And so certainly some opportunities, but not one that I would see him jumping all over unless he had the opportunity and the backing to create something special.
Who do you do studio analysis for again?
LAFC.
Okay, I just thought it was a pitch maybe to Jesse Marsch there.
No, I just think about, I'm literally thinking about the club not having Bob Bradley leaves and the results leave with him, and you built a team to win, but you didn't build a club, and the club's still building their academy and they're getting all these things right. But when I compare that to my intricate knowledge of Philadelphia Union, who built an academy for a decade and now are trying to build a sustainable system where you go, this is the way that we play. These are the young players that we have. It's a little bit more RB Leipzig-like in terms of the plan and the philosophy that you build on versus saying, how do I construct a team that can win today? And then, in 3 years, somebody else did it again, which is a little bit MLS 1.0 or 2.0. These new clubs, even though the pressure's on them to do well and sell tickets and whatever, they still have to find a way to build this foundation and philosophy of the club moving forward.
No, absolutely. A massive part that we haven't discussed, what needs to be addressed, is he has his family to think about as well, right? Moving all the way to Europe and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, we want your thoughts on this, everybody. What do you think? Where do you think he should go next? A lot are saying, of course, maybe wait until after Qatar, maybe US17.
We got a Greg Berhalter. Greg Berhalter on here. Hey, Greg.
Greg's feeling the heat because now that Jesse's available, he's got to put it together for the US national team.
As soon as Jesse loses a job, Greg makes a YouTube account and starts commenting on everything. Oh, the propaganda.
Oh, boy, we're about to cause some mayhem. Anyway, we will keep tabs on that one. Very good. But good luck to Jesse Marsch, whatever happens in the future. All right, we're going to keep this tight. 3 minutes of La Liga, okay? Let's see if we can do it. Let's begin, obviously. Real Betis wake Xavi up a little bit with that 1-0 win. We talked about it in the preview, everybody. And thanks to that win, they are third. Unbelievable. Pellegrini, what he's doing. Jimmy, you're wearing the shirt. Talk to me.
Yeah, great performance. Won me, followed up a hat trick against Levante in the previous match day to get the game winner in this particular game. When you see the goal, go watch the highlights. The defending from Barcelona is shambolic, I think is the word the kids like to use. I don't know. They probably don't even know if they use that. It's suspect is what the kids like to use. So bad. Everybody's just a little bit late, second to everything, and just not really what I think. Xavi's going to be pissed when he sees that. I didn't really feel like they were all that dangerous. I didn't feel like Betis was under the gun for too much of it. I didn't feel like they were under too much pressure. Nice to see Ousmane Dembele getting back out there and getting some valuable minutes for Barcelona. But fair play to Betis. They got a great result, and Barcelona have got a lot of work to do because Madrid are on the top of the table with 39 points. Barcelona have 23, which means they're actually closer to the bottom of the table, Barcelona, than they are to the top. That's not a good look.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not even reading that, Gerardo. Xavi left Al Sad and joined All Sad.
I've got plenty of time for that joke. That's amazing.
Don't laugh. Heath Pearce, let's talk, because Real Madrid, obviously, they win, but they do lose. Karim Benzema. Jovic stepped up with a goal and an assist, and Kubo seals Mallorca win over Atleti. Let's show that table as Heath talks there, Des Norris. Go ahead, Heath.
Yeah, Real Madrid again are in this year where they found, it's kind of a bizarre year. Sevilla continued to do well also, but it's a year where it was going to be whoever found their feet the fastest. We're going to be able to get some points at the top of the table. I compare this also to Italy, where I thought AC Milan were going to be the team that found their feet fastest and were able to run away. But looking at 8 points, obviously Sevilla have a game in hand and can stay competitive. But if you're Real Madrid and you're looking at Sevilla and Betis, you kind of look at it the same way that you did Sociedad in the past, and you go, man, they're going to give up points along the way. We might also, but if that's who we have to compare to, I like my odds. And then obviously with Atletico Madrid giving up those points to what was Takafushi Kubo scoring. Yeah, you know, hey, it's an American-owned club, which is kind of cool, and we've got some friends of ours that are partial owners of that whole thing. But it's just, not great for you, Jimmy, as a fan.
No, I'm an Atleti supporter. I'm really disappointed that a Diego Simeone managed team has a 1-0 lead at home against Mallorca, who are struggling, and they give up 2 goals in the last 10 minutes. One on a set piece, and one because they took too big of a risk to try to pressure, and that leads to a breakaway that Taki Kubo finishes. Now, fair play to Mallorca, but god damn it, Atleti, what is even happening? Like, they shouldn't even be in this position. They should be competing for the top of the table, and now I don't even think they're going to repeat as champions, and that makes me sad. All sad. I'm all sad over
here. Oh, good. All sad. Yeah, and by the way, Sevilla winning against Villarreal keeps it in task, but there's a little bit of a theme here in La Liga, just like in Bundesliga. Real Madrid seems to be looking very comfortable, especially with all those other clubs suffering. Oh, by the way, yeah, thank you, Des. One final point. Just another reason why we love Iago Aspas. Zach Lowy, our friend Zach Lowy on Twitter, reminded me of this. Celta Vigo. I don't know if you know this. Okay, Iago Aspas scores. Okay, he goes crazy. He injures himself in the process, knowing that, he's gonna, he could injure himself more or whatever. Mm-hmm. He's gonna need to figure this out. So he takes his shirt off, knowing that a yellow card will mean that he'll be suspended for the next game. So he can rehab himself. So he does that. He takes his shirt off, gets booked, whatever. So he's not available for the next game. But that's good because he knows that he hurt himself. So that's just the genius of Iago Aspas, by the way.
Four-dimensional chess.
He's playing chess when all of us are playing checkers, by the way. So well done there. But that's La Liga chat. All right, we are gonna wrap things up here with MLS. We have the MLS Cup. And yes, yours truly, come on now. These have been flexing. I flexed it. Portland Timbers, NYCFC is your MLS Cup next Saturday. Fantastic stuff from both sides. Portland took care of business against Real Salt Lake. And NYCFC, we have to mention it, a depleted Philadelphia Union, of course, due to COVID. But there was a good fight, 60 minutes up, and Philadelphia Union actually led 2 goals in the space of 90 seconds, and then obviously NYCFC in the latter stages, and they go to their first ever MLS Cup. Congrats to our friend Ian Polger, by the way, who does color commentating for them as well, and so many others. Obviously, my MLS local team, I've reported on them ever since their inception, so it's pretty cool to see them. But Heath, MLS Cup, Portland Timbers, NYCFC, at Portland, by the way, which is actually a big deal. Talk to me.
Yeah, can I also just mention that the match winner came from Talis Magno, who is supposed to be the next global superstar. And this was supposed to be a turning point for Major League Soccer. He was a super sub here, but it was supposed to be this turning point for Major League Soccer where now these teams are challenging for not just 21, 22, 23-year-olds in Argentina and Brazil, but the next big stars to be the stepping stone on their way. Obviously delivers in this fashion, but hasn't been, the player that you expect of him when he was supposed to be one of the top few players in the world. But this is one where it went from being Philadelphia Union as probably the favorites to win MLS Cup at that point, to then being the favorites to lose in this game. And I was surprised with how poor NYCFC played, considering they were playing against a makeshift squad of very few starters, to the point where Aurelian Collin, who I knew played for Philadelphia Union, but only because I had seen his name on their website, but hadn't seen him play in a long time.
They were overwhelmed in Philadelphia, which says a lot if they travel to Portland. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And Portland's going to be a rocking atmosphere. I actually can't think of a better atmosphere for an MLS Cup than a Portland. I mean, obviously there are some other rival stadiums, but anytime that you can take a match to Cascadia, you're going to get a rocking house, which I respect. And for Portland, just an incredible story for them. Outmatched. They were just too strong for Real Salt Lake, who, again, I think after a while, if they couldn't iterate, it's certainly an opportunity, I think, for Mastroeni to get the full-time job, considering he had this level of performance or this fight in the team. I think that's a good belief system, but just weren't good enough to beat the Portland side. And then Philadelphia Union again went up 1 goal. And I was like, man, the magic could happen, but just too weak of a team to put out, with too little experience to manage those types of expectations to realistically make it to the final. And for anybody who doesn't pay attention, they had 10 plus players in COVID protocol, so unable to play, including Andre Blake, including a number of their starters.
The captain. Glesnes. I mean, they had a lot of guys. I'll just jump in and say that very disappointing for Philadelphia. I feel like they've had these real exciting propositions of success. They've been to a couple Open Cup finals and haven't won any of them. They are on the precipice of getting to their first ever MLS Cup. And then they have this really unfortunate situation happen with the COVID protocol. And now they're shorthanded. And yet they still almost made it happen, which makes it even feel more heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Like, they just would have got slapped around by NYCFC. Like, all right, well, we're missing 11 guys, but they were hanging in there for a long time.
And that was their first conference finals, by the way, that they'd ever reached.
That's
12
true,
years to get that far, just to have their team depleted, was already a disappointment.
Yeah, that's really tough.
Look, it is tough. And looking forward to NYCFC, I'm happy that Tati Castellanos will be back for the final. Portland, on the Portland side, you'll have Sebastian Blanco, who should be healthy. So
on Asprilla.
And Asprilla will be back in. So you should have 2 full squads, relatively healthy, ready to go for MLS Cup. 2 teams that know how to score, make the game exciting. So from that standpoint, I'm very excited about it. And now I'm actually getting itching to go. I'm looking right now at my Google Maps, like 10-hour drive. I'm like, I might have to do it. So Heath, if you want to fly up and road trip up there, let's make it happen. But on the Portland side, and what I want to say about the Western Conference in particular, the last 7 seasons in the Western Conference champion has either been Seattle or Portland. And so I have a little bit of a question of what the hell the other teams are doing in the Western Conference, because that is unacceptable. The rest of the other teams, especially you LA teams that pride yourself on being the best.
Hey, by the way, you tweeted, by the way, that you're going to.
We're going to road trip, baby. Let's go.
You got to be careful there. You might get a few crazies joining. Ari Castilla's already. Oh no, she was going to volunteer, but she's not going to do it anymore. So anyway, go to Jimmy Conrad's Twitter if you want to join up. That should be very interesting.
I'm getting a 15-passenger seat van at this point. Let's go.
Congrats, by the way, to Alex Callens as well, a Peruvian back in the final. That's awesome to see. All right, well, we're going to do a weekend preview, obviously, later in the week and stuff, but just very quickly, Heath, give me just quick final. What do you think? Just the Portland Timber support, local support will be too much, you think?
Yeah, that atmosphere, it's hard to explain it unless you're in it, obviously, but that home field advantage is real there. I've seen very, very average players become stars on that pitch because of the backing of that stadium and that fan base. And so I just think this is a huge, huge lean towards Portland Timbers to win this one, plus the mentality that they have to be able to fight and scrap. I just don't see how NYCFC can travel there and realistically expect to do anything but sort of fight their way out of that. So I'm going with a heavy favorite Portland on this one.
All right, Jimmy.
And conversely, I've seen great players go there and look average because of the atmosphere and because of the pressure. I wonder, and my big concern with Portland was, could they manage that, knowing the game against Salt Lake, that if they won, they would host the game. There's a lot of pressure there. And I thought they handled it on both sides of the ball very, very well against a team that was feeling very good about themselves. So I feel like they can kind of take that mojo that they had in this one and parlay it into this. But Tati Castellanos and NYCFC, I think it's going to be a close one, and I think it's going to be a great game. And that's what we need in our biggest games, is a nice advertisement for the league.
Absolutely. By the way, speaking of Castellanos, he was a guest. He's a friend of the show, so make sure you check that out. Super interesting, in Spanish as well, with subtitles as well. So that's cool. And also, Gio Savarese was a guest as well on the show. So a lot there to discuss, but we'll have much more content, specifically weekend preview, and even more leading up to MLS Cup. Final thoughts as we say goodbye, because by the way, Chelsea women clinched domestic quadruple with a 3-0 win over Arsenal in the Women's FA Cup final, and so many other stories from everywhere as well. And speaking of the women's game, don't forget to follow our great sister podcast, Attacking Third, as well. But final thoughts before we say goodbye, Heath Pearce.
Just Chelsea women's, that's building a dynasty to win that much in a season, and it's fantastic. And that's really it. I went over my time limit on every one of my comments today, so I've got no closing thoughts,
including your LAFC pitch.
Yeah, please come home, Jesse. Please come home.
No, I just want to give a shout out to Sam Kerr in that game. She scored a second half brace. Fran Kirby scored very early against Arsenal. To Heath's point, they are a dynasty. But that goal that she scored that really broke it open for Chelsea and created some distance in the scoreline is world class. And I can't say enough about what they've done. Emma Hayes, the manager of Chelsea, and just Sam Kerr in particular. What a player.
Yeah, my only final thought is Aston Villa beat Michael Oliver. We beat VAR. We beat Leicester City, and we got 2-1. That's all I'm going to say. But thank you so much, everybody, for being part of the family. Jimmy Conrad, thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
Heath Pearce, always a pleasure, man.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, Qué Golazo Pod, Jimmy Conrad on Twitter as well, and Instagram, Heath Pearce the same, and myself, LM Echegaray, Luis M. Echegaray on Instagram. But we got so much more content because guess what? The Champions League final matches in the group stages, the final games of the year. We're going to have all that content, previewing, recapping. We got some great guests coming as well as weekend preview. Follow us on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your pods. Have a great end of your weekend. And if you're listening on Monday morning, I hope you have a great beginning to your week. We will see you next time. Until then.